Hi, my name is Tony Santo and I'm a large format photographer. This video is all about my fall trip to Zion National Park. Please stay tuned to come along on this ride.
For centuries, humans had come to, lived in, and found sanctuary in Zion Canyon. We hope you find the same sense of awe and wonder in Makuntuweed that they found. Treat this place with respect by staying on trails, packing out your trash, and leaving it as you found it.
Ronald Reagan was President of the United States, and Arnold Schwarzenegger's The Terminator was released the first time I visited Zion National Park in 1984. I was on a family vacation and just 10 years old, but the majestic beauty of the sandstone sheer cliffs peppered with junipers and cottonwoods left me with an indelible connection to the deserts of southern Utah. Each time I've returned over the years has brought me new adventures and, of course, photographic opportunities. This particular year, I was fortunate to have returned twice in a week to enjoy the autumn splendor. So I packed up the 8x10 view camera and set out for the washes of the east side of the park during my first leg of the trip and returned several days later for a challenging hike through the Narrows. So for this scene back here, I've got this nice red maple leaf resting on some sand ripples. I've got my 8x10 camera with my 360mm lens. I've got 26 inches of bellows, which is far more than what is called for, focused at infinity, so it's a macro shot, which means I have to compensate as far as exposure goes. So that was 1.5 stops of exposure that I've compensated. And what I've done there is I've just metered at f/64, but then I've gone between f/45 and f/32 for my aperture, and I've left my exposure at 8 seconds, but now I need to double that because of reciprocity failure. So I actually have a 16-second exposure of this scene. In retrospect, this scene didn't work well for this image, and at best is mediocre, so it won't make it on my walls as a fine art print. But it did get me warmed up for a few of my favorite images that I took using my Hasselblad 501 CM while I went hiking in the east side of the park. I had a fantastic time traveling light and trying to find small scenes that would work well on Fujifilm Velvia 50. Well, here I am at the trailhead for the Riverwalk, and I'm about to do about a 1-mile hike back to the Narrows so that I can get back in there and hopefully get some nice 8x10 shots of some scenes with some nice glows in the canyon. For the beginning part of the trail, I'm using sneakers for the 1-mile hike so that I can be a little bit more comfortable going in, and as well as coming back out. Hopefully this will feel really good after a long day walking in the water and having my feet all wet. Well, I'm now at the trailhead for the Narrows, and it's time to get out of my sneakers and get my water shoes on. Well, here we are. Let's get started on our hike. quarter of a mile in, and it's time for a drink of water. So I've set my camera up in this location, and I've calculated my exposure to be 15 seconds, but then I have to account for reciprocity, so I'm looking at about a 30-second exposure for this scene. I'm shooting at f/45 and an 8x10 piece of film and ISO 50, Velvia 50. So we'll have to see how it turns out. We're gonna let some hikers walk through, and then I'm gonna go ahead and take my pick. As an exercise physiologist, I love the physical challenge of hiking through the Narrows. It's great cardiovascular exercise, really keeps you fit. You add on that 50-pound pack, and boy, I tell you, it is quite the challenge. So much so that I actually went a little bit hypoglycemic, started to get a little shaky, so I'm just taking a little break, and I feel a lot better now. I had some tangerines and some snacks to bring that blood glucose back up. My wife would be proud.
So I went ahead and took this shot of this scene behind me here, shot at f/45 for a 30-second exposure, 15-second metered exposure, but I doubled it for reciprocity correction. So we'll see how it turns out. There's a really nice subtle glow back there. The scene fits pretty nicely into Velvia's 5-stop range, so I'm really excited about this. I hope it turns out. And I'm just hanging out with another large format photographer, Marty, and another photographer back here named Lauren.
The beauty of this classic view captured my attention and compelled me to stop and set up the camera. I am sure glad that I did, because it is by far my favorite image that I took on this trip, and is certainly a top contender for a fine art print to hang in our home.
So I found this really nice scene in the Wall Street section of the Narrows that has a lovely glow back there on the canyon walls. So I decided to break out the 8x10 and shoot this scene on Velvia 50. I shot at an aperture of f/64 for 4 minutes. And I metered it at 2 minutes, but because of reciprocity, I've doubled my exposure. So hopefully that'll be enough time to really bring out that nice glow and all the detail in the foreground with the rocks in the water, etc.
Wall Street of the Narrows is arguably one of the finest locations along this hike for photography. This scene is a classic, and it is my second favorite image of the trip, and also a contender for hanging on the wall.
I'm in the latter part of Wall Street here, and I decided to stop and do a pic of this scene. Although the glow has disappeared off the canyon walls back there, I still think it'll look nice. There's a really soft lighting in the canyon right now. So I'm shooting at f/45, ISO of 50 on Velvia 50 8x10 film for a 4-minute exposure.
Typically, long exposures won't register hikers that pass through a scene. However, these individuals entered the scene soon after I clicked the shutter and lingered long enough to record on film. It's okay with me, since this isn't the greatest image I took on the trip.
So I ended up exposing a couple of sheets of 8x10 film on this particular scene that you see behind me. It's a really pretty scene. There's a nice glow. There's still a little bit of a glow back there. The only problem is I wasn't planning on shooting 2 pieces of film, but one of my film holders has a crack in it, and I actually had difficulty putting it back in, so I ended up exposing a second sheet of film just in case there are any light leaks. I'm pretty sure there are going to be some light leaks, but you never know. So hopefully the second shot will turn out just nice.
As it turns out, there were some light leaks that forced me to crop the image to a 5:7 ratio, which actually made for a more pleasing composition. Despite this, I am still not very fond of this image, nor do I like the colors, so it too won't be adorning any of the walls in our home.
It's been a really nice time here in Zion National Park. I ended up meeting some fantastic large format photographers and other photographers along the way. Ben and Marty and Lauren and Mike. It was really nice meeting some people who have the same kind of passion for photography and large format photography that I do. So it's been fun making new friends and doing a little photography in a beautiful place. As always, thanks for watching. Got some water on my lens.